Hey, this is Mike Goldberg, the voice of Bellator MMA. Join us right now for MMA FanCast.
I'm just a violent individual. Jim, you did a great job with that.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
You're listening to MMA FanCast. Here are your hosts, Jim Mooney and Luke Payson.
Welcome to MMA FanCast. This is Luke Payson, and I am joined by Ethan, the Wolverine Goss. Ethan, welcome to the program.
Hey, I'm glad to be here.
It's great to have you here. This is the third time we've had Ethan on the podcast, and we are really honored to have you back on, Ethan. We had you on before your first fight with 247 Fighting Championships, which is actually the inaugural event, April 6th in the spring of 2018. You won that fight by rear naked choke in the second round. And then we had you on afterwards to talk about how the fight went, things like that. And now you're back here, going to be fighting November 16th at the Princescape Arena in Canonsburg for 247 Fighting Championships, which is actually their third event now. But let me have you say, what is so exciting about your upcoming fight here for 247? There's big news, and I'd love for you to go ahead and say it. What is your fight, and why are you so excited about it?
Well, first off, it's the main event now. It'd be my first pro main event, headlining a card. Second, it is for the 24/7 World Featherweight Championship. So
very exciting.
It's going to be a 5-round title fight, which you normally don't see that very often on the regional scene.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. Obviously, congratulations. I know that when it was first announced, you were the co-headliner, and then somebody got injured and wasn't able to fight, but it was always for the featherweight belt, even when it was a co-headliner, so that was exciting. But what was the conversation like when the owner was setting you up, when Ryan Middleton was asking or saying that it was going to be a 5-round fight? What type of conversation was that like, given the fact that, if listeners don't know, there was 2 previous title fights, one on the first fight and one on the second fight, both involving Kama Death Star Worthy, and both those fights were scheduled for 3 5-minute rounds. So what was the conversation like when they said it was going to be 5 5s?
He told me that John's camp wanted 5 rounds.
Wow.
And I talked to my coaches, and we agreed with it. I don't have a problem with it. I don't think that, it's not in my favor to go 5 rounds. For me, I feel like the longer the fight goes, the better I go. But when they said they wanted to do 5 rounds, I'm like, yeah, what the heck, why not? Reason why, like a big reason why a lot of guys don't want to do 5s, and I'm not saying this was Kama's reason or not, and it's
right.
Totally justified, is, you agree to a contract to do 3 rounds, a certain pay to do 3 rounds. Well, now that you add 2 more rounds onto this contract, fighters, speaking from a fighter standpoint, we feel that we should be paid, extra money for them extra 2 rounds, if that's
right.
what we're agreeing to for. Because we're putting our bodies out there, we're putting our bodies on the line, all that stuff. For me, it's more or less the experience, you know what I mean? I see myself, fighting on the big shows again, whether it's a Contender Series show or a
right.
Bellator or one, you know what I mean? And there's a lot of times you end up in 5-round fights. You just got to be the main event of a card to be in a 5-round fight. So I figured, why not? Let's do it. It'll be a great experience. So we went with it from there.
Well, that certainly is great feedback. Thanks for kind of explaining some of the behind-the-scenes fighter mindset. Obviously, 2 more rounds is almost an entire another fight. 6 rounds would be an added fight, so it's maybe 75% more of a fight. And I think that's a great attitude you have. I know that you've gone on record saying that you found another groove. You're on a 2-fight win streak. Your record is 5-4. The last time we had you on, you were talking about really learning, and obviously your second to last win was a knockout. Your last win was a rear naked choke. You're finishing guys. You're taking good named guys. John DeJesus has a lot of fights. He's 10-8, 18 fights. He's fought some big names in the featherweight regional circuit, and certainly brings a lot of experience and attention into him. And you've also gone on record, you just mentioned it at the Contender Series, that you see yourself progressing. You're still young. You see yourself progressing into another organization, or at least raising your stakes. What is making you now confident that you are still in the growing and learning stage of your career?
You know what, man? Just everything just feels good. You know, I'm in a good place everywhere, mentally, physically, emotionally. Everything feels good. I have no outside distractions. I got, you know, everything at home's great. I got a wonderful woman that takes care of me. I got great training partners. You know what I mean? Great coaches. Everything just seems to be in place. And like I said it before. You know, I kind of found myself as a fighter again. Now I fell into a, you know, kind of a rut, and it was more of a mental rut than it was anything. And you know, I tried to be a stand-up guy. I tried to, you know what I mean? I tried to force things. And you know, once you quit doing that, and once you get out of that mentality, you know, they just show up. Right. Like and every fighter wants it. I mean, everybody wants to get that nice flashy knockout or great fancy submission, or, I mean, everybody wants to be a highlight reel. But you know, when I just started being myself, I just started doing what I was taught to do, and listen to the instructions in the corner. You know, everything come together. I quit hunting for the knockout, and I got the knockout. I quit hunting for submission, and I got the submission. You know what I mean? It's just small steps. It's literally a game of inches. It's small steps that builds up to that process.
Absolutely. And some people might not remember. I think you're also referencing back to the April fight when you defeated Elijah Callender. You did a great job. You got that rear naked choke. I interviewed you after the fight. You talked about being kind of mentally back and being focused. You also mentioned wanting to get back to Cannonsburg and fight for 247 again, which is just so wonderful that here you are again now headlining a card with a title line. So it's really exciting. But in that process, you did mention the fact that that choke got there. You were in a scramble situation, and you kind of found that choke. And a lot of fighters will talk about that being opportunistic. How important is that for you to fight the fight that you need, as opposed to fighting the fight that you know, that you decide on ahead of time?
And, you know, it's very important. It's a chess match in there. And I mean, man, I don't care what anybody says. Anybody can say, "Oh, I'm going to knock you out," or "Oh, I'm going to hurt you," or "Oh, I'm going to end it in this amount of time." Man, you do not know. Nobody knows. I don't know, and John doesn't know what's going to happen in there. One of us might get clipped. One of us might not get clipped. Who knows? It might hit the ground quick. It might not hit the ground quick. We don't know. So you have to be prepared for anything that can happen. And in this game, it's crazy because literally anything can happen. You know what I mean? We've seen a lot of wild stuff happen. Oh, absolutely. But, you know, I just be prepared mentally and physically for everywhere to go. You know, I envision the fight going, you know, I envision it 5,000 different ways. You know, maybe it's in my favor, maybe it's in his favor, maybe something good happens, but I need to be able to react if something bad happens. So, and even in that last fight with Elijah, like he caught behind the ear with that punch, and that was the first time that I had something like that happen in a fight. And in 20 fights, it was the first time I felt that feeling, but I reacted the way that I needed to react, and I was calm, I was comfortable, I felt fine. You know what I mean? I just had to react the right way, because if I would have reacted the wrong way in that situation, it would have been over in his favor. Sure. So
you had said previously on our show, and I think it's borne itself out in the Elijah fight, now coming in to this title fight, that you had said that even though your record was probably not as much as some people have as far as fights, that you have really focused on being well-rounded. And I think that the fight I saw in April really showed that, and your mindset shows that. And we just saw an example of a fighter who's really not well-rounded in the UFC, Ben Askren, and fighting Damian Maia. And I bring it up, not to try to jump on the Ben anti-wagon. He might be retired anyhow, but something that you said is that you have to be willing to fight the fight where the fight is. And Damian Maia, for his credit, said afterwards when he won that, hey, my game plan was to make him strike because I wanted him off his game. I wanted him uncomfortable. I wanted him tired by the time it does get to the ground, because then he caught him in what was a fairly easy rear naked choke as far as rear naked chokes go. And I think that's a great mindset to have, that even when you're one of the greatest grapplers to ever do it in MMA, like Damian Maia, he has been one-dimensional at times in some of his fights, and that's cost him. And it's interesting to see somebody in his early 40s still recognizing that he has to be well-rounded. And it's great to see you here still in the beginning of your pro career, building your reputation, that you really know the value of being well-rounded. And I think I'd asked this to you before, but technique-wise, what has clicked? Have you made a change? You've mentioned sparring partners. You've mentioned coaches and gym. Has something changed? Because you had a bit of a rough patch when you were starting out as a pro, and now you've really hit your stride. So did something change? You've mentioned mental, but as far as, which was great, but as far as game planning, training, technique, sparring, coaching, what has changed that's helped you in the last, let's say, 2 or 3 fights?
You know what, man, I calmed down. Really is what it is. I used to, invite a firefight. I used to, try to. There was occasions where I would get loud, or I would just I'd get off balance, or I would get overextended, and I didn't realize it at the time. But now that I'm working with, I mentioned it before, Darren Cassidy. Now that I work with Darren Cassidy on the striking, I mean, he's. As soon as I do it one time, he's screaming at me. You know what I mean? Like, you're off balance. You're off balance. You need to get on balance. Like, you need to be able to fight on balance. You got so much more power there. You got so much more. Your angles are better. And and Darren's the kind of coach that, I mean, he's like hardcore. Like, they wouldn't let him in a high school. Kind of, you know what I mean? He's a grinder. And that is my kind of coaching style. That is what I love to have. When somebody like that's hard-nosed and hard on you, because he doesn't sugarcoat anything. He doesn't beat around the bush about anything. And his son is the number 1 ranked kid in the state right now in wrestling, and I work with him every week. You know what I mean? And they've taken my wrestling beyond other levels. You know what I mean? And I had a great jiu-jitsu coach before. And Jason Dignan, but I haven't really been training with him in the past year and a half or so. But I'm training jiu-jitsu now with Cody Carlheim, which would be Jason's pupil, and Ray Ross, who is a black belt, and he's my kind of overall coach. He'll do the conditioning and do the groundwork, the grappling and stuff. And he likes to clinch work and stuff like that. And he's a black belt in judo and a black belt in Japanese jiu-jitsu. So I kind of do basically 2 different types of jiu-jitsu, but they're similar. But, like I said, just calming down, you know what I mean? And having these guys there to just calm me down. And you guys all met Cam back in, when was that, July? Cam Allgaier?
Oh, yeah. He made a 135 debut at the amateur level, had a great fight, and he's back on the card.
That kid is a pit bull. Like, he just literally, every day he walks in the gym, he has me in the crosshairs, and he just wants to beat me so bad. And he will go all night long trying to beat me. And, that really, in all honesty, that has made me so much better because it's kept me on my toes. It's kept me working harder, trying to stop, because I can't let him beat me. You know what I mean? I got to keep showing him who's the king of the jungle in the gym, right? But working with him, and we work with Sydney a lot. I also work with bigger guys, Sheldon Nyhoff, who he was supposed to be on this card, but his opponent ended up pulling out. I don't know if they found a replacement for him or not. We work with a really good Dutch kickboxer and Brad Mountain, who fought for like Lion Fights and stuff like that.
Oh, I've seen Brad Mountain fight. He fought for USKA Fight Sports back at Altoona. I've seen him fight. Yeah.
Yeah, we work with him. He's in the area. And like I said, everything comes together. We're all on the same page. We all know what's going on, and everything comes together in the gym. And I have no complaints. And right now, I feel absolutely amazing.
Well, you know what's interesting when I ask fighters about their gym, and it comes up over and over again, you did a great job, is that you have to be willing to learn from everybody. The fact that you pointed out Cam Algar, who was very impressive, his debut as a young kid, teenager, right?
Yeah, he's 19 or 20 now. 19
or 20, so, right, still young. And what's cool here is you're a pro. You've got experience. You've had some nice wins. You're obviously on a fight streak or fighting for a professional bout, and yet you point to a young, hungry amateur who's coming in, who's training right, who's learning right, who's being disciplined, because the reality is in MMA, you have to be willing to learn from everybody, whether it be somebody with a ton of fights, not a lot of fights, people with different skill sets and different experiences. And I think there's a lot of times where just the humility it takes. Now, obviously, you talked about wanting to show them and being king of the jungle, but that only works because you're also willing to learn. It's a weird dynamic that I think a lot of times is challenging in a team. And of course, at the UFC level, we've seen some horrible team splits. Probably the most famous would be the John Jones and the Rashad Evans, but there's been other team splits, Platinum Perry and Cowboy Cerrone, where but it becomes hard because a lot of times what you hear from people is you hear that that person wasn't a team player. And it's interesting. I always try to point this out to our listeners, is that MMA is an individual sport when you're in the cage, but it's a team sport in your training, in your mentality, going into the corner and talking to your coaches, coming up with a game plan, learning from the people that train around you. You go into that cage with everybody that's helped you. You've pointed out your lady having a solid relationship, being strong mentally and emotionally. We've seen people get thrown off their game emotionally. And so I think a lot of times that's what's so cool about interviewing fighters on this show, is we get a lot of fighters that are still at that regional level. And obviously 247, I want to throw that out there, is doing a great job of showing talent off, such as yourself and Kama, who's now made it to UFC on short notice. And that's obviously a big testimony to Ryan Middleton from 247, putting on fights and putting on cards that get noticed. And obviously that's a goal of yours to keep moving. Had you won or fought for an amateur belt prior to this? What's it like fighting for a belt and getting some of that name recognition as far as being a title holder?
I don't really think about it too awful much, to be honest with you.
Okay.
It's just, it's obviously a goal to be able to call yourself a professional fighting championship, because at a 99 or at 100% of people, 1% ends up becoming a pro fighter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And being able to be at the pinnacle of that and being able to be a pro champion, that's unreal. It's wild. It's pretty insane. I held 2 amateur titles at featherweight and lightweight. You know what I mean? It's just winning the belt's cool, but at the end of the day, it's about being able to perform the best that I can perform in the cage. You spoke about Ryan and how he's putting on these shows and stuff. I mean, who doesn't want to see Ethan Goss versus John DeJesus?
It's a huge event. Huge.
People were commenting on it, and I don't mean to sound arrogant here, but people were commenting on it being like, wow, what a fight. You know what I mean? Because they know we both come around. We're both OGs. You know what I mean? John's been fighting professionally since I started fighting amateur. I think he was a pro in 2012. And
I was going to say, this is his 19th pro fight, so yeah.
And this would be my 21st overall fight, my 10th pro fight.
Yeah.
It's just, when you're in it that long, you almost, in that scenario, you felt the butterfly feelings. You've seen, you know what I mean? You've been down that road. You felt it. You just do what you got to do. You know what I mean? I don't like to think too much into it because I don't like it to get into my head. But when I do speak about it, you know, and I tell people that I'm getting ready to fight for the 24/7 Featherweight Title, and I tell them, you know, I am going to be the 24/7 Featherweight champion. I am going to win this fight. Mm-hmm. You know, I speak positivity about it, and you know, like I said, that's really the main things for me.
No, that's a great mindset to have. I mean, I think one of the things that's important that has certainly derailed people mentally or in their behavior is managing success. I mean, a lot of coaching and a lot of athletics and a lot of fighting is overcoming obstacles, you know, hitting a rough patch, losing, feeling some type of disappointment, getting a match, and then it falls through. But also, particularly in an individual sport like fighting, managing success, what success does to you, managing what the mindset is, because it is healthy to say you are the headliner. It's important to recognize that there's that added level, not only the added level of time, 5 minutes rounds, but also the stakes. Yes, every fight's important, but you want the stakes to get bigger as you fight. You want, like you were saying, you'd love to get on the Contender Series next year. It seems like they do it more in the spring and summertime. You'd love to get a record and get noticed. It's also important, when we mentioned Ryan, the matchmaker, that you take fights that are helping you test yourself and get better. A lot of times at the regional level, you see guys fighting guys that they just take them for the easy match. And I think that's great that you're respecting De Jesus and talking about him being experienced and an OG in it. And, you know, he's been around a long time. This isn't somebody that is easy. This is somebody that's going to make you better. And it's a big part. It's a big part of a championship mindset, is the mindset that I'm going to win and I want it to be something that makes me try to get better and push myself, as opposed to I want the easy fight. So you definitely have a great attitude. Let's do some of your thank yous. You've already shouted out some people, but I always want to give you the opportunity in case you have sponsors or anybody that you want to thank by name, as we talk about the fact that this fight is still it's a couple weeks out still, and it's going to be exciting to see you. You mentioned last time I had you on that even though you're from a few hours away, that you have a lot of fans that come out, and you consider the Pittsburgh, Canonsburg is where the fight is, kind of your neck of the woods, which is wonderful. And so what are some of your thank yous and some of your sponsors or anybody you want to give credit to now as we talk about that part?
I mean, really, I definitely got to thank Ray and Ange. They're the ones that own the gym. They invest a lot of time into me. Darren, he invested a lot of time into me. I know he's a busy guy with a busy life, and he's got kids in sports and stuff. You know, everybody in the gym too, Cam, Sheldon, Sydney, you know, Darren's boy, Caden, you know, everybody, Brad Mountain, everybody that I work with, even past and present coaches, man. I mean, the guys that I trained with back in the day, I mean, this is all, I'm here because of them. And I wouldn't be because of them. You know, those guys that spent the time with me back then years ago, you know what I mean? I was just a young kid, you know, trying to chase a dream that not many people believed in, but you know, the select few that did, you know, got me to the point where I'm at today. And you know, I can't thank them enough for that. I don't really have any sponsors because I hate asking people for money.
Oh. Well, if anybody's listening and they want to sponsor Ethan, reach out to him, because it would be great to get you some sponsors.
I know life's tough, and like you said it yourself, everybody faces adversity. Mm-hmm. Everybody has moments where they're down, where they're out. You know, when you said that immediately it thought to my mind, you know, I lost 4 fights in a row before. You know what I mean? And that was a crappy time for me. I wasn't there mentally, wasn't there emotionally, but you overcome it. You know what I mean? And so that definitely got the wheels turning. But and like I said, I don't like to ask people for money because I know everybody falls on hard times and stuff. So if people were willing to sponsor, that's great. That's awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it. You know, I just kind of go about my stuff myself.
Well, that is a great attitude to have. You know, one of the things that can be challenging is when as a fighter is when you allow those external, whether it's trying to hunt down sponsorships, as great as that is, whether it's trying to get people to believe you that this is your dream and that you want to become a champion and you will be a champion. It's a lot of it, because it's an individual sport. You're not on a team. You have a team around you, but you're not on a sports team that kind of protects you. You kind of have to have that mindset that you're gonna go with the people you've mentioned. You're gonna go with the people that are helping you and that believe in you, that support you. And obviously something like sponsors, I think it's hard sometimes for listeners to understand that at the regional pro level, you oftentimes have a lot of juggling acts to do, whether it be doing side jobs or coaching. Some people have full-time jobs, or I talked to somebody recently on the podcast that actually lives in the gym because his coach has given him an opportunity to live in the gym kind of as like night security. He stays there, but it's where he lives because he doesn't have an apartment right now, and he's young, and it's an opportunity, and he's grateful for the opportunity. And sometimes that sounds odd for people to recognize that, part of this MMA journey is being grateful for the opportunity, even though it might not look like somebody else would want to do it. And you also pointed out something that I probably haven't had people talk about on this podcast before, and that is it's very trendy in MMA. And of course, sometimes it's true to talk about how the change in coaching helped, and that's true at times, and how getting to a new coach and getting to a new gym helped. But something that doesn't get enough credit, and you pointed out very well, is the respect given. Even if you end up having to go to a different gym or changing coaches or going in a different direction stylistically or whatever it is, the people that trained you on your first punch or your first roll in BJJ are forever a part of your journey, even if your paths go different ways. It's such an important part because you had to start someplace. Everybody has to start someplace, and that's a great mindset to have. And obviously, the people that you were referring to know who they are, and it's exciting to know that it doesn't matter how many championships you win, everybody along the way that comes to your fight, that supports you, even your opponents, that's all part of your journey. That 4-fight loss streak that you were talking about, that's all part of your journey. It's just really great to see your mindset. We'll plug it again. There's still time to get tickets. Make the trip if you're from Goss's area, if you're from the Pittsburgh area, Ohio. They've been bringing more fighters in from Ohio, but it's 247 Fighting Championships, November 16th at the Princescape Arena in Canonsburg. And like the Wolverine already pointed out, people are excited to see your fight as the headliner, as the main event, as the 5-round fight, because it's got a lot of buzz. It's very exciting. There's going to be a ton of amateur talent as well as many other pros on the card as well. And it's really a great opportunity to support the fighters and the local fight scene. And I think 247 is already showing that they mean business as far as putting on great talent.
As a fighter, anytime we get to talk like this, it's a time that, we can put ourselves out there. And the more we put ourselves out there, the better chance somebody like the UFC or Bellator or somebody can find out who we are.
I don't know who it was. It might have been my MMA News or something like that was talking about. Yeah, right, might have been. But they were talking about how fighters, kind of need that podcast and those interviews to build people talking about them, because you can only fight 4 times a year. Some people fight more, but, that 2 to 4 times a year, you have to keep people interested because people like the UFC or just fans. It's tough because you're grinding away day in and day out. I remember once when I was training fighters, it was Easter Sunday. I'm a big Easter guy, but Easter Sunday night we were training. And I remember thinking, like, nobody knows that. Nobody knows that we're having a late practice on Easter Sunday so that we can keep people moving and keep people grinding. But that's part of the fighter's journey, is that you got to be willing to put the work in when no one's watching. So, but anyhow.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like where I come from, I live in a town that doesn't even have a stoplight. We're surrounded by cornfield stuff. I'm out in the boonies. I'm out in the sticks, and everybody that has anything around here, they've worked for it. You know what I mean? So I ain't afraid of hard work, and that was instilled in me at a young age. And my father, he owns his own excavating business, and I grew up, working for him. And when I was a kid, we'd get picked up from school. We'd get let out of school for the summer. He'd pick us up in the dump truck, and we'd be going to work with him. And so that was instilled in me at a young age. And I work a 40-hour job a week, sometimes more. And so therefore, and I start at 6 o'clock in the morning, so I'm up by 5:30. So therefore, I can't train 3-4 times a day like some guys can. I don't like Kama, he owns the gym. He works out of the gym, so he's at the gym. He's there where he can train. Me, I don't have that opportunity, but I'm also physically doing something all day long. You know what I mean? So me training, a couple hours a night, every night, 5 to 6 days a week is perfect for me.
Right.
It doesn't wear me down. It's not too much. It's not too little. You know what I mean? And, and we never know either. Like I'll never say that I'm outworking an opponent. I'll never say he's not working as hard as me because I don't know. We all work hard. We're professional athletes, and we worked hard to get where we're at.
Absolutely. Well, that goes back to the mindset that I think a lot of people want themselves to feel good and say, there's no way he's working as hard as I am. I mean, you're right. You don't know that. You can only say, I'm doing as much as I can do. You keep the focus on what you're doing and recognizing that you have to balance your full-time job with training, but also recognize the benefits of the full-time job in the sense that you are active and you're moving, and that's doing it. Plus, it also keeps your mind on something else because sometimes fighters burn out when it's every single day. I mean, there's an advantage to being full-time, like you mentioned, comments and other people, but there's also times where mentally that burns you out. I think of Donald Cowboy Cerrone, how he has to do other things than just MMA all the time. Some of it's crazy stuff, but to keep his mind just not on one thing all the time. So it's certainly a really great opportunity to see you balancing that. Obviously, like you say, you're a hard worker. That mindset. I didn't realize that your town didn't have a stoplight. It goes to show, and I think this is what's really exciting too. It goes to show that if you put the work in, even in a little tiny town with no stoplight, with a few people, you get a good group around you, you can still have success. And that kind of is the exciting part. If you go way back in UFC history, or at least maybe kind of back with Rich Days Franklin, his first training gym was in a guy's shed. They cleared out the lawnmower and stuff, and that was where he first learned kickboxing, some of the other stuff before he became UFC champion. Obviously, we've gone way past there where guys are training in multi-million-dollar gyms and huge almost resort settings. But I do think that MMA is beautiful in the sense that if you put the work in and are disciplined, even in a tiny town where it's not really known for a hotbed of MMA, you can do it. I think that is what's exciting about MMA. I think about one of the greatest heavyweights to ever fight, Stipe Miocic, and how he has said over and over again that he's not leaving his gym. He's staying with the gym that got him there. It's not really a well-known gym, or at least it wasn't until he made it as champ. But there was a lot of pressure when he first became champ to quit his firefighting job and get to like a big gym, a well-known gym. And I think he's done a lot to say, hey, he's from the town he's from. He wants to focus on the team that's gotten him there. So there's definitely a great mindset out there with a lot of fighters where it is about doing what works for you.
I'll put it to you this way. My graduating class in 2010 had 60 people in it. If that puts it in retrospective for you.
That does. Well, you mentioned that you have a busy day, and obviously you've been on, and we appreciate you coming on the show. I think that's another thing that we always want to respect as fans is that we might see what you do in the cage, and sometimes it's super exciting, and sometimes it might be frustrating, or we don't know what's going on. But the reality is you're living your life. You're getting up at 5:30 in the morning. You're doing a job. You've got family issues. You've got good things. You've got bad things. And all too often, fighters get judged just on what happens in the cage. And really, it's about who you are as a person. And I think that's what you've talked about. We've had you on before. You've talked about a lot, is that being a mentor and developing yourself as a person, because some of the greatest fighters or greatest athletes don't spend the time on who they are as an individual, and then it shows in what we might call moral issues or behavioral issues. And I think a lot of times it's because it's that balance of who you are as a person is way more important than who you are as a fighter, because the better you are as a person, balanced, emotionally stable, and hardworking, the better you'll be as a fighter. So it's been an honor having you on the show. Ethan, we wish you the best. I can't wait to see you on November 16th, easy for me to say, November 16th, Prince Cape Arena, 247 Fighting Championships.